Zahara Silver spent 5 years proving she belonged in Port Valier's luxury event industry. Tonight, coordinating the prestigious Crystalline Foundation Gala should have been her triumph. Instead, her ex-boyfriend Hyun Suk appeared with his wealthy new girlfriend, offering Zahara a job in front of amused guests, reminding everyone she was just the help. Then Lee Cha, the billionaire heir whose family built an empire from syndicate roots into legitimate business, placed his hand on her waist and pulled her close. In that moment, beneath crystal chandeliers with 300 witnesses, he didn't just claim her romantically. He reminded Hyun Suk of something terrifying: the woman he'd dismissed worked for the man who controlled the very organization Hyun Suk served. When Lee intertwined his fingers with Zahara's and settled his other hand possessively on her waist, Hyun Suk's face drained of color. He didn't freeze from jealousy alone. He froze because he'd just publicly disrespected the woman his ultimate boss was claiming as his own. Zahara Silver owns Silver & Company Events, a boutique coordination company in Port Valier, a coastal city where old money, new tech wealth, and carefully hidden criminal enterprises coexist behind polished facades. After 5 years of relentless work, she's built something real: a professional office in the arts district, a team of 4 skilled coordinators, and a reputation for executing flawless high-stakes events. The Crystalline Foundation Gala represents her biggest contract yet: $300,000, 300 of the city's most influential people, and the kind of showcase that could elevate her company to the top tier. She earned this opportunity through 2 years of smaller foundation events, proving she could exceed their demanding standards. For 6 months, she's worked with Lee Cha, the foundation's newest board member. He's the heir to the Cha family empire, a shipping and logistics conglomerate that his late mother transformed from syndicate operations into legitimate businesses. But the Cha name still carries weight in Port Valier's underworld. Lee continues his mother's legacy of legitimacy while maintaining the power structure that makes even mid-level criminals nervous. Their professional relationship has been cordial and proper. He asks detailed questions during budget reviews. She keeps meticulous records. They've both noticed financial irregularities in foundation accounts, but until tonight, neither has acknowledged their suspicions to the other. What Zahara doesn't know: Lee has been working with federal investigators for 8 months, building a case against people using his family's legitimate businesses and his mother's foundation to launder money. The investigation has been slow. They have evidence of financial discrepancies but can't prove criminal intent without insider documentation. Hyun Suk, Zahara's ex-boyfriend who dumped her 2 years ago, works for mid-level operatives in an organization that ultimately answers to the Cha family hierarchy. He was assigned to gather information about Zahara's business 2 years ago, before the foundation scheme even started. Tonight, everything changes. Zahara Silver had exactly 4 minutes to fix a champagne problem before 300 guests noticed. The delivery truck is stuck in traffic, her assistant Mika said through the earpiece. 40 minutes out. Zahara stood in the Crystalline Foundation Gala ballroom, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and gold decorations. 300 guests. 0 champagne. This could not happen. Call Antoine's wine shop, Zahara said, already walking toward the service entrance. Tell them I need 40 cases in 30 minutes. Price doesn't matter. She was pulling up Antoine's number when someone stepped in front of her. Zahara Silver? Her stomach dropped. She knew that voice. Hyun Suk stood there in an expensive suit, arm around a woman wearing jewelry worth more than Zahara's car. His smile was the same one that used to charm her, before she learned what he really did for money. Hyun Suk, Zahara said carefully. I really can't talk right now. There's a situation. Everyone, this is my ex-girlfriend, Hyun Suk announced to the small group around them. His voice carried. Zahara plans parties for a living. Zahara, this is Minji. She just opened her 3rd art gallery in Seoul. Minji smiled politely. The other guests looked amused. Minji actually needs someone for her Port Valier gallery opening, Hyun Suk continued. I told her you'd be perfect. You know, if you're not too busy tonight making sure the napkins are folded correctly. The group laughed. Quiet, polite laughter that made Zahara's face burn. Her phone buzzed. The champagne crisis. Real work. Actual problems. That's very kind, Zahara said, forcing a smile. Hyun-suk, I really need to go. Enjoy the gala. She walked away before he could say more. Behind her, she heard Minji ask, was that rude? Zahara didn't care. She had a gala to save. She was speed-walking through the ballroom, phone pressed to her ear, when it happened. She crashed directly into someone's chest. Her phone went flying. She stumbled. Strong hands caught her waist, steadying her. I'm so sorry, she started, looking up. Isu Cha stood in front of her in his black tuxedo. His white shirt had red wine splashed across it. The glass he'd been holding was now on the floor. Zahara's face went hot. Oh my God. Mr. Cha, I didn't see, let me get something. It's fine, Isu said. His voice was calm. You seemed urgent. Emergency? The champagne delivery is stuck and we have 300 guests and I just ruined your shirt and this is the worst. How many cases do you need? Zahara stopped. What? Of champagne. How many? 40. But the supplier is 40 minutes away and... Isu pulled out his phone. He spoke briefly in Korean, then hung up. My wine distributor is 10 minutes from here. They'll deliver in 15 minutes. Zahara stared at him. Why would you do that? Because this is my mother's foundation gala, Isu said. And you're clearly excellent at your job. I'd prefer tonight not be remembered for warm beer. He paused. Also, you owe me a new shirt. 15 minutes later, champagne cases arrived. Crisis solved. Zahara found Isu an hour later. He'd changed into a fresh white shirt. Thank you, she said. Seriously. You saved everything. You would have solved it, Isu said. You seem very resourceful. He paused. I've been watching you work tonight. Very impressive operation. You've been watching me? I'm on the foundation board. I pay attention to who we hire. Your coordination is exceptional. Zahara hesitated. They'd worked together for 6 months on foundation planning. Professional meetings. Budget reviews. He'd always been direct, thorough. She'd always been careful, prepared. I noticed someone bothering you earlier, Isu said quietly. Near the champagne fountain. Zahara stiffened. Just someone from my past. It's handled. He seemed familiar. His name is Hyun-suk, Zahara said carefully. He works for some of the vendors I mentioned in our meeting 3 months ago. The ones who keep appearing on invoices for services that weren't provided. Isu's expression sharpened. The discrepancy vendors. Yes. And he's from your past. Zahara met his eyes. We dated. 2 years ago. Before I knew what he was involved in. She paused. I didn't mention it before because it seemed unprofessional. But if you're looking into what I think you're looking into, you should know he's connected. Isu studied her face. You've been keeping records. Of the irregularities. Every invoice. Every vendor. Every budget change. It's my job to document everything. Zahara, Isu said quietly. I think we should have a detailed conversation. Soon. Are you available this week? To discuss foundation finances? Among other things. His gaze intensified. I think we could help each other. Movement caught Zahara's eye. Hyun-suk was walking past with Minji. He saw them standing close together, talking quietly. He stopped. His face went pale. Isu noticed. Without breaking eye contact with Zahara, he asked, Is that him? Yes. Isu reached for Zahara's hand. His fingers intertwined with hers deliberately. Slowly. Then he stepped closer, his other hand settling on her waist. They were standing so close now that Zahara could feel the warmth from him. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Around them, conversations quieted. People noticed. "This week," Isu said clearly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "My office. We have important matters to discuss." He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, never breaking eye contact. The entire ballroom seemed to be watching. Hyunsuk stood frozen, face completely drained of color. When Isu finally released her hand, his fingers lingered on her waist for just a moment longer. Zahara's heart pounded. Isu smiled slightly, then walked away. Zahara stood in the center of the marble floor with 200 people staring and her ex-boyfriend looking like he'd just witnessed something impossible. What had just happened? Zahara didn't sleep well. She kept replaying the moment. Isu's hand on her waist. His fingers intertwined with hers. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only person who existed. What did it mean? At 7 a.m., Mika burst through her apartment door with coffee and her laptop. "You're all over social media," Mika announced, opening the laptop on Zahara's kitchen counter. Zahara's stomach dropped. "What?" Mika turned the screen. Photos. Dozens of them. Zahara and Isu standing close together. His hand on her waist. Him kissing her knuckles. The captions read, "Mystery woman with Isu Cha and Port Valier's most eligible bachelor finally taken, and who is she?" "This is bad," Zahara whispered. "Are you kidding?" Mika said. "This is amazing. Every wealthy person in this city now knows Silver and Company. Events exists. My phone has been ringing since 6 a.m. with people asking about our services." Zahara's phone buzzed. "Unknown number, Tuesday 2 p.m. My office downtown. Address attached. Come alone. YSC. Isu." Tuesday afternoon, Zahara arrived at Isu's downtown office building. The penthouse floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Isu's assistant led her to a private conference room. Isu was already there, reviewing documents. "You came," he said. "You said it was important." "It is." Isu gestured to a chair. "Please sit. This conversation is going to be difficult." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were surveillance photos. Of her. Outside her office. Getting coffee. Walking to her car. All taken over the past 2 weeks. Zahara's hands went cold. "Who took these?" "We're not sure yet. But they're connected to the people I've been investigating." Isu pulled out more documents. "I need to be honest with you. I haven't just been noticing foundation discrepancies. I've been working with federal investigators for 8 months building a case." "Federal investigators?" "The Crystalline Foundation has been used to launder approximately $2 million over 3 years. Money comes in dirty through criminal operations, gets mixed with legitimate charity funds through fake vendor payments, and comes out clean on the other side." Zahara felt sick. "Your mother's foundation?" "Yes. The foundation she built to fund arts education for kids." Isu's voice was tight with controlled anger. "We have evidence of the financial discrepancies. What we don't have is proof of how the operation works mechanically. Who approves what? How vendors are selected. How the fake invoices get processed. That's where I come in," Zahara said slowly. "I have all that documentation." "Yes. But there's a problem." Isu's expression was serious. "By publicly connecting yourself to me at the gala, you become visible to them. They're watching you now. These surveillance photos started appearing 3 days after the gala. So I'm in danger. Potentially. Which is why I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering." Isu leaned forward. "I'm asking you to work with me and the federal investigators. To provide your documentation. To help us understand how the fraud operation functions from the inside. That's it? Just share my records? It's more complicated than that. If they suspect you're cooperating with an investigation, you become a target. The federal agents have advised that you'll need protection. Security. Careful movement monitoring. Zahara looked at the surveillance photos again. Someone had been following her for 2 weeks. Watching her. And she'd had no idea. What kind of timeline are we talking about? She asked. 3 to 4 months. Maybe longer. We need to build an airtight case. Gather evidence carefully. Get testimony. Then coordinate arrests across multiple jurisdictions. 3 to 4 months of being watched. Being in danger. 3 to 4 months of having federal protection and my family's security resources dedicated to keeping you safe, Isu corrected. But yes. It's a significant ask. Zahara was quiet for a long moment. I have one question. Anything. At the gala. When you took my hand. Was that part of this? Were you already planning to recruit me for the investigation? Isu met her eyes directly. No. That was impulse. I saw someone trying to diminish you and I reacted without thinking. The investigation angle came later, when you mentioned Hyun Suk's connection. He paused. I apologize if I made you uncomfortable. You didn't, Zahara said quietly. Then she made her decision. I'll help. On one condition. Name it. When this is over, when you arrest everyone involved, I want to be there. I want them to know that I was part of taking them down. Isu smiled slightly. Deal. They spent the next 2 hours going through foundation records. Zahara explained her filing system, her documentation process, her observations about which board members pushed certain vendors. As she was leaving, Isu stopped her at the door. Zahara? The social media attention from the gala. That's going to continue. People are going to ask questions about us. About our relationship. What should I tell them? Whatever you're comfortable with. But if you'd prefer, we could let people assume what they're already assuming. It might actually provide useful cover for our frequent meetings. You want people to think we're dating. Only if you're comfortable with that. It's your choice entirely. Zahara thought about it. A fake relationship would explain their meetings. It might even provide protection if criminals thought she was connected to the Cha family. Okay, she said. Let them think what they want. We'll just not correct anyone. Are you sure? I'm sure. As she left his office, Zahara realized what she'd just agreed to. 4 months of working with federal investigators. 4 months of pretending to date Isu Cha. 4 months of being watched by both criminals and cameras. This was either the bravest or stupidest decision of her life. Possibly both. 3 weeks after the gala, Zahara received a formal invitation. Not from Isu. From his grandmother. Dinner at the Cha family estate, Zahara read aloud to Mika. This Saturday at 7 p.m. Business casual attire. His grandmother wants to meet you, Mika said, eyes wide. That's serious. We're not actually dating. She probably just wants to meet his business associate. Zahara. In Korean culture, you don't meet the grandmother unless it's serious. Zahara spent 3 days researching Korean dining etiquette, practicing with chopsticks, and having mild panic attacks. Isu picked her up Saturday evening. In the car, he seemed almost nervous. My grandmother is very traditional, he warned. She'll probably speak mostly in Korean at first. It's a test. A test of what? Patience. Respect. Whether you'll stay polite even when excluded from conversation. Isu glanced at her. Just be yourself. That's all you need to do. The Cha family estate was stunning. Traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern luxury. Stone pathways wound through gardens. The main house had curved roof tiles and wooden beams. Madame Cha stood at the entrance in an elegant hanbok. Her eyes were sharp and assessing. "Grandmother," Isu said in English. "This is Zahara Silver." "Zahara, my grandmother, Madam Cha." Madam Cha looked Zahara up and down slowly. Then she spoke in rapid Korean. Isu responded in Korean. A brief exchange Zahara couldn't understand. Finally, Madam Cha stepped aside. "Come in." Dinner was formal. Madam Cha sat at the head of the table. Isu's aunt was also there, studying Zahara with obvious curiosity. For the first 30 minutes, Madam Cha spoke almost entirely in Korean. Isu translated occasionally, but Zahara felt completely lost. She focused on her food, trying to remember every piece of etiquette she'd learned. Don't stick chopsticks upright. Wait for the eldest to start eating. Use both hands when receiving dishes. Then Madam Cha asked a question in English. "What do you do, Miss Silver?" "I own an event coordination company," Zahara said. "We plan galas, weddings, corporate events for clients throughout Port Valier." "Event coordination," Madam Cha repeated. "You organize celebrations." Zahara could feel the test in those words. The dismissal waiting if she didn't answer correctly. "I manage complex operations under extreme pressure," Zahara said instead. "Last month, I coordinated a wedding for 300 people where the original venue flooded 2 days before the event. I found a new location, moved all vendors, redesigned the entire layout, and the bride never knew there was a problem. That's what I do. I make impossible situations look effortless." "And my grandson hired you for the foundation gala." "The foundation hired my company 2 years ago for smaller events. We proved ourselves reliable. The gala was our biggest contract." Madam Cha was quiet for a moment. Then she said something Zahara didn't expect. "I used to host dinners. When my late husband was building his businesses. Important people would come. I would serve beautiful food, pour drinks, smile graciously." She leaned forward slightly. "Everyone thought I was just the hostess. Just the wife making sure guests were comfortable. But while I was serving them, I was listening. Learning their secrets. Finding out who owed money, who had problems, who could be useful." Zahara suddenly understood. People underestimate the hostess. "Always," Madam Cha agreed. "And that is their greatest mistake." The rest of dinner was completely different. Madam Cha asked Zahara's opinions on various business matters. They discussed negotiation tactics. Isu's aunt even warmed up, asking about Zahara's company growth plans. After dinner, as Isu was getting the car, Madam Cha pulled Zahara aside. "My grandson tells me you're helping with foundation matters," she said quietly. "Yes. Financial documentation review." "Financial documentation." Madam Cha smiled slightly. "That's what we're calling it now." She studied Zahara's face. "You understand what you're involving yourself in?" "I do." "And you're doing this because $2 million was stolen from programs meant to help children. Because your son's wife built something good that's being corrupted. Because someone should stop it." Madam Cha nodded slowly. "My daughter-in-law would have liked you." She pressed a business card into Zahara's hand. "My private number. If you need anything during this documentation review, you call me directly." "Why would you help me?" "Because my grandson is stubborn like his mother. He tries to protect everyone and forgets he also needs protection. You seem like someone who understands that partnership works both ways." In the car driving home, Isu was quiet. "Your grandmother is intimidating," Zahara finally said. "She gave you her private number, didn't she?" "How did you know?" "She only does that for people she respects." "She's testing me too, in her way." Isu glanced at Zahara. "She likes you." "That doesn't happen often." "Even though this is just business?" "She knows it's more complicated than that." "She always knows everything." Zahara looked out the window at Port Valier's lights. 3 weeks ago, she'd crashed into Isu at a gala. Now she was having dinner with his grandmother, helping federal investigators, and pretending to date one of the city's most powerful men. Her life had become very complicated very quickly. But as Isu's hand found hers on the center console, she realized she didn't entirely mind the complications. "This is the 8th invoice that doesn't match my records," Zahara said, sliding another document across her desk. Isu added it to the growing pile. It was 11 p.m. on a Wednesday. They'd been working together 3 evenings a week for the past month, cross-referencing Foundation financial records with Zahara's actual event documentation. Foundation records show $47,000 paid to Lunar Catering for the spring benefit, Isu noted. "Your records show you used Paolo's catering for $23,000. And I have Paolo's invoice, signed contract, and payment confirmation. Lunar Catering didn't provide any services. But somehow they got paid by the Foundation anyway." Isu's federal contact, Agent Reeves, had been clear: they needed to document every discrepancy, trace every payment, build an unbreakable paper trail. It was slow, tedious work. Zahara's office had become investigation headquarters. One wall was now covered with a timeline of fraudulent transactions. Another wall had a web of shell company connections. "Your assistant thinks we're dating," Isu observed, looking at the crime board they'd created. "Everyone thinks we're dating. There are Instagram fan accounts dedicated to us. I saw those. Some are very creative. Don't tell me you actually looked. My security team showed me. Apparently we're Port Valier's power couple." Zahara laughed. The sound was tired but genuine. They'd spent so many late nights together over the past month that a strange partnership had formed. Not quite friendship. Not quite professional. Something in between. "How's your actual business doing?" Isu asked. "With all this time spent here? Honestly? Struggling." Zahara rubbed her tired eyes. "I had to turn down 2 potential clients this month because I can't guarantee my availability. Mika is covering more than she should. We're surviving, but barely. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to impact your work so severely. It's not your fault. I chose to help." Zahara looked at the crime board. "But I'll admit, some days I wonder if it's worth it. We can stop. Right now. I'll tell Agent Reeves we need to find another way." "No." Zahara's voice was firm. "We're too far in. And someone needs to finish this." They worked in silence for another hour. Around midnight, Zahara's focus started slipping. She kept reading the same invoice over and over without processing it. "We should stop for tonight," Isu said gently. "Just 5 more minutes." But 5 minutes later, Zahara's eyes were closed. She'd fallen asleep with her head resting on her folded arms. Isu watched her for a moment. Then he carefully draped his jacket over her shoulders, dimmed the office lights, and continued working quietly so she could rest. When Zahara woke at 3 a.m., she found Isu still at his laptop, several coffee cups scattered around him. His jacket was draped over her shoulders. "You stayed," she said, voice rough with sleep. "Someone needed to keep working. And you needed sleep. You could have woken me. You've been working 16-hour days for a month. Let yourself rest." Zahara sat up, pulling his jacket tighter around her. It smelled like cedar and something expensive she couldn't name. "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" "Doing what?" "All of this. The late nights. The investigation. You could hire professional forensic accountants. Federal investigators have their own people. You don't need me specifically." Isu was quiet for a long moment. "You're right. I don't need you specifically for the investigation." He looked at her directly. "But you're the only person who's been seeing these discrepancies for 2 years and caring about them. Everyone else, the board, the other investigators, they see numbers. You see the programs that aren't getting funded. The kids who aren't getting helped. You care about the impact, not just the crime. That still doesn't explain the late nights." "No. It doesn't. Isu's voice was softer. The truth is, somewhere between spreadsheets and coffee at 3 a.m., working with you became the best part of my week. And I can't entirely explain that either. The confession hung between them. Before Zahara could respond, Isu's phone buzzed. He checked it and his expression changed. What? Zahara asked. Agent Reeves. They've identified the shell company owners. 3 names. Isu's jaw tightened. One of them is Foundation Director Jean. So we have proof. We're getting close. But Reeves says we still need evidence of active fraud. Something current. Something we can catch happening in real time. Zahara thought for a moment. Then an idea formed. What if we created an opportunity for them to commit fraud? A situation so tempting they can't resist? What kind of situation? A fake event. Something expensive enough that inflating the budget would be worth their risk. We propose it to the foundation, watch who approves what, document everything. Isu considered this. That could work. But it puts you directly in the operation. You'd have to be the one proposing it, coordinating it. I know. But it's the fastest way to get evidence they're still actively stealing. It's also dangerous. If they suspect you're setting them up, then we'll be very careful. Zahara stood up, energized by the plan despite her exhaustion. We need something believable. A special event. Maybe an anniversary gala for the foundation? 25 years since your mother founded it? That's actually perfect. The anniversary is in 3 months. We could propose an early celebration. They spent the next hour sketching out the plan. A fake anniversary gala. Real enough to be believable. Expensive enough to tempt the fraudsters. Documented thoroughly enough to serve as evidence. By the time Isu left at 5 a.m., they had a strategy. Zahara watched his car pull away from her office window. She was still wearing his jacket. Still feeling the warmth of his confession about late nights being the best part of his week. This investigation was supposed to be professional. But somewhere between crime boards and 3 a.m. coffee, it had become something else. Something neither of them had planned for. You want to propose what? Mika stared at Zahara across their office conference table. A 25th anniversary gala for the Crystalline Foundation. 300 guests. Black tie. Full formal service. But the foundation's actual anniversary isn't for 3 months. I know. We're proposing an early celebration to coincide with their annual donor drive. Zahara pulled out the proposal she'd spent a week drafting. It's believable. Time-sensitive. And expensive enough to be interesting to certain board members. Mika flipped through the proposal, her expression shifting from confused to understanding. This is part of it. The investigation. I can't tell you details. But yes. How dangerous is this? I'm being careful. I promise. The proposal went to the foundation board the following Monday. Zahara presented it during their monthly meeting, explaining how an early anniversary celebration could boost donor engagement and set up their largest fundraising quarter ever. Most board members loved it. Director Jin's eyes practically lit up when he saw the budget estimates. This is ambitious, Director Jin said, studying the numbers. Very ambitious. Ms. Silver, have you confirmed these vendor costs? These are preliminary estimates, Zahara explained, lying smoothly. I'll get firm quotes this week. I think we should aim higher, Director Jin said. This is a milestone celebration. We shouldn't cut corners. Exactly as predicted. Over the next 2 weeks, Zahara sent request for proposal documents to legitimate vendors. She got real quotes. Reasonable prices from companies she actually wanted to work with. Then Director Jean started making suggestions. Ms. Silver, regarding catering, I really think lunar catering would be more appropriate for an event of this significance. Director Jean, I've gotten quotes from 3 excellent caterers. Paolo's came in at $32,000 for the full service you requested. Nevertheless, please get a quote from Lunar as well. For comparison. Zahara requested the quote. Lunar Catering, a company that had never provided actual services to any foundation event, quoted $75,000 for the same service Paulo's offered for $32,000. That's more than double, Zahara pointed out during the budget review meeting. For the same menu, same service level. But Lunar has experience with events of this caliber, Director Jean insisted. The quality difference is worth the investment. Two other board members, both part of the fraud network, according to federal investigators, supported him. The vote passed. Lunar Catering was approved at $75,000. Then came Florals. Director Jean pushed Prestige Florals at $40,000 instead of the local florist Zahara preferred at $18,000. Then Linens. Elite Linens at $12,000 instead of her usual supplier at $5,000. By the time all suggestions were incorporated, the event budget had inflated from $90,000 to over $200,000. Zahara documented every conversation. Recorded meetings, in Port Valier, only one party needed to consent to recording. Saved every email where Director Jean pressured her toward specific vendors. Agent Reeves was thrilled. This is exactly what we needed. Real-time evidence of fraud in progress. But the complications were exhausting. Zahara had to coordinate a fake event while managing 3 real client weddings. She had to answer questions from innocent board members about event details while hiding the truth. She had to maintain her cover relationship with Isu while actual feelings developed. One Wednesday, everything fell apart simultaneously. She accidentally sent her real client's wedding menu to Lunar Catering. And sent the fake anniversary gala's menu to the very confused wedding couple. Why does our wedding menu include something called political donor appetizer hour? The bride asked over the phone. Zahara scrambled. That's an error. A terrible, terrible error. Your menu is the one with the seasonal tasting plates. I'll resend it immediately. Meanwhile, Lunar Catering received a wedding menu and sent a very confused email asking why the foundation gala menu had changed so drastically. Isu arrived at her office that evening to find Zahara surrounded by 4 different event binders, her hair falling out of its clip, stress-eating cookies from her desk drawer. I sent the wrong menus to everyone, she announced. The fake event menu went to real clients. The real wedding menu went to the fake caterers. I'm a disaster. Isu looked at the chaos and, instead of being upset, started laughing. It's not funny. Zahara protested. It's a little funny. You're juggling 4 events, a federal investigation, and a fake relationship, and you're stressed about crossed menus? These clients trusted me. And you'll fix it. You always do. Isu started helping her sort through the binders. Bride gets the seasonal menu. Lunar gets the donor menu. Crisis managed. It took 2 hours, but they fixed everything. By the end, Zahara was exhausted but grateful. Thank you, she said quietly. For not making me feel stupid. You're not stupid. You're overworked. There's a difference. Isu hesitated. Zahara, we need to talk about something. What? This fake event. The anniversary gala. We're going to have to cancel it eventually. When the arrests happen, everything falls apart. Your professional reputation, people are going to ask questions. I know. But by then, we'll have proof the fraud existed. I can show that I was working with federal investigators. My reputation will survive. Are you sure? This is your business. Your career. I need to know you've thought this through. Zahara had thought it through. Late at night. During every stressful moment. She knew the risks. I'm sure, she said. This matters more than comfort. Isu nodded slowly. Then he said something unexpected. When this is over, when the investigation ends and you don't have to coordinate fake events anymore, would you have dinner with me? Real dinner. Not budget meetings or crime boards. Just dinner. Zahara's heart did something complicated. Are you asking me on a real date? I'm asking if you'd be interested in seeing what real looks like. Without federal investigations and fake events between us. I think I'd like that. Good. Then I'll hold you to it. As Isu left that night, Zahara realized the fake relationship had already become real somewhere between 3 a.m. coffee and menu mix-ups. The question was whether either of them would admit it before the investigation ended. Hyun-suk showed up at Zahara's office on a Tuesday morning without warning. Mika buzzed Zahara's desk. Your ex is here. He looks scared. Should I call security? Zahara's instinct was to refuse him. But scared? That wasn't like Hyun-suk. Send him in. But stay close. Hyun-suk entered her office looking nothing like the confident man from the gala 2 months ago. His hands were shaking slightly. I need to talk to you privately, he said. Please. 5 minutes. Zahara gestured to the chair across from her desk but left her office door open. Talk. They know someone is investigating, Hyun-suk said without preamble. My bosses. They don't know who yet, but they're preparing to eliminate loose ends. Loose ends? Anyone with access to Foundation records. Anyone who might talk. He looked directly at her. You need to distance yourself from Foundation work immediately. Destroy any records you have. Pretend you know nothing. Why are you telling me this? Because I was a terrible boyfriend. I know that. But I'm not going to watch you get hurt because you decided to investigate with Isu Cha. Zahara kept her expression neutral. What makes you think I'm investigating anything? Because you've been seen with him constantly for 2 months. Because you're coordinating a Foundation event that has Director Jin's fingerprints all over it. Because I know you, Zahara. You see things other people miss. And you care too much about what's right. He leaned forward, voice urgent. These people make witnesses disappear. 2 men who worked for our vendor shell companies have vanished in the past month. Please. Walk away before it's too late. Zahara saw genuine fear in his face. Despite everything he'd done to her, he was risking his own safety to warn her. Thank you for the warning, she said carefully. But I'm just coordinating an anniversary gala. Nothing more. Don't lie to me. Not about this. Not when your life might depend on it. Then don't ask me questions you don't really want answered. Hyun-suk stood up, frustrated. When this goes bad, and it will go bad, don't say I didn't warn you. He paused at the door. And for what it's worth, I actually did love you. Before everything. That part was real. After he left, Zahara immediately called Isu. We need to meet. Now. Something's happened. They met at Isu's penthouse instead of her office, more private, more secure. Zahara recounted the entire conversation with Hyun-suk. Isu's expression grew darker with each sentence. He's right about the disappearances. Agent Reeves confirmed it last week. 2 men connected to the vendor shell companies haven't been seen in 3 weeks. You knew about this and didn't tell me? I didn't want to panic you. That's not your choice to make. Zahara's voice rose. This is my safety. My life. You don't get to decide what information I can handle. You're right. I'm sorry. I was trying to protect you and instead I treated you like you needed protection instead of information. Zahara paced the penthouse living room, trying to calm down. So what do we do now? Speed up the timeline? Shut everything down? Agent Reeves says we're close. Another 3 to 4 weeks and we'll have enough to move on arrests. If we shut down now, months of work disappears and the criminals escape. 3 to 4 more weeks of being a target. With maximum security. I'm moving you to a secure location. Absolutely not. I have a business to run. Clients depending on me. Clients won't matter if you're dead. The blunt statement hung in the air. I'm not hiding, Zahara said firmly. but I'll accept increased security. Reasonable precautions. That's my compromise. They argued for another 20 minutes before reaching an agreement. Zahara could continue working from her office, but with security present. Her apartment building would have surveillance. A driver would accompany her movements. It felt like living in a cage, but Zahara understood the necessity. That night, as Isu's security team installed cameras around her apartment building, Zahara sat alone in her living room and let herself feel the fear she'd been suppressing. 2 men had disappeared. Hyun Suk, who had every reason to stay silent, had risked himself to warn her. Director Jean and his associates were preparing to eliminate witnesses. She was a witness. Her phone rang. Isu. Are you okay? He asked without preamble. Honestly? No. I'm terrified. Do you want me to come over? Yes. The word was out before she could reconsider. Please. 20 minutes later, Isu arrived with takeout from her favorite Thai place and Chairman Meow in a carrier. I thought you might want company, he explained. Both kinds. They ate dinner on her couch with Chairman Meow purring between them. They didn't talk about the investigation. They talked about everything else. Childhood memories. Embarrassing stories. What they'd wanted to be when they grew up. Around midnight, Isu started to leave. Wait, Zahara said. Could you stay? Just tonight? I don't want to be alone. Isu studied her face. I'll sleep on the couch. You take your bed. Thank you. But an hour later, Zahara couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. She found Isu still awake on her couch, reading case files on his tablet. Can't sleep? He asked. Every time I close my eyes, I think about those 2 men who disappeared. She sat down on the opposite end of the couch. What if that happens to me? It won't. I promise. You can't promise that. Then I promise this, anyone who wants to hurt you has to go through me first. And I don't lose easily. It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like an oath. Zahara found herself moving closer. Isu set down his tablet. Somehow, they ended up with her head on his shoulder, his arm around her, both of them finally relaxing enough to sleep. When Zahara woke up at dawn, they were tangled together on her couch, Chairman Meow sleeping on their legs. Isu's eyes opened. Morning. This looks very compromising for a fake relationship. We passed fake about 6 weeks ago. You know that, right? Zahara did know. She'd known for weeks. What do we do about it? We finish the investigation. We make sure you're safe. And then we figure out what real looks like. In that order? In that order. It wasn't perfect. But it was a plan. And for now, with danger closing in and deadlines looming, a plan was enough. Agent Reeves called on a Wednesday morning with news. We're ready to move. 3 weeks from today, we'll freeze accounts and execute arrest warrants simultaneously. But we need your client safe until then. Define safe, Isu said. He was in Zahara's office, both of them on speakerphone with the federal agent. Somewhere secured. Minimal public exposure. Protection detail. Zahara shook her head. I have 2 client events in the next 3 weeks. I can't just disappear. Ms. Silver, these people have killed to protect this operation. 3 weeks is a lifetime in an active criminal investigation. Then put security on me during the events. But I'm not abandoning my clients. After the call, Isu was quiet. Say it, Zahara prompted. Say what? Whatever you're thinking that's making you look like that. I think you're being stubborn. I think your safety matters more than any client event. And I think you're underestimating how dangerous these next 3 weeks will be. You're probably right about all of that. But I'm not hiding. I've spent my entire career being invisible. I'm not going back to that now. They coordinated the wedding that weekend with 4 security guards positioned around the venue. The bride never noticed. The guests never knew. The event was flawless. But the stress was crushing. Zahara was managing events, fielding questions about the fake anniversary gala, maintaining her fake but actually real relationship with Isu, and trying not to panic about the countdown to arrests. By week 2, she was running on coffee and determination. "You need to sleep," Mika said, finding Zahara at her desk at midnight reviewing timelines. "I will. Soon. I just need to finish this." "No, you need to sleep now. Isu texted me. He's worried about you." "Isu texted you?" "We have a group chat. Your entire team is worried about you." Zahara wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. She made it home and collapsed fully clothed on her bed. Her phone buzzed. "Isu, sleep. Everything else can wait." The next morning, Director Jean called an emergency board meeting. "There are concerns about the anniversary gala budget," he announced to the assembled board. "Some questions about vendor selection and cost-effectiveness." Zahara's blood went cold. Did he suspect? "Ms. Silver," Director Jean continued, "perhaps you could walk us through your vendor decision process?" It was a trap. He was testing whether she'd defend the inflated costs or admit the fraud. Zahara made a split-second choice. She played dumb. "Of course, Director Jean. You and the board selected these vendors based on your quality recommendations. Lunar catering, prestige florals, elite linens, all your suggestions. I simply implemented your guidance." Director Jin's eyes narrowed. She'd just put the responsibility back on him publicly. "Yes, well. Quality does cost money. I just wanted to ensure we were being good stewards of Foundation resources." "Absolutely. Which is why I documented every decision, every email, and every recommendation in the project file. Would the board like to review those records?" She was calling his bluff. If he pushed further, she'd produce evidence of his pressure to use specific vendors. "That won't be necessary," Director Jean said quickly. "I'm satisfied with your explanation." After the meeting, Isu caught up with her in the parking lot. "That was brilliant," he said. "That was terrifying. He was testing me. Which means he suspects something. We need to tell Agent Reeves." Agent Reeves moved the timeline up. Arrests happen in 1 week. Friday morning. Coordinated raids across 6 locations. Can you both hold on for 7 more days? 7 days. 168 hours. Isu practically moved into Zahara's apartment. Chairman Miao had definitely moved in. Security was constant. On Thursday night, 3 days before arrests, Zahara and Isu sat on her apartment balcony looking at the city lights. "When this is over," Zahara said quietly, "when the investigation ends and the arrests happen and everything goes back to normal, what happens to us?" "What do you want to happen?" "I want this to be real. Not strategic. Not pretend. Just real. It's been real for me since the cake tasting disaster in week 5 when you argued passionately about chocolate being superior to vanilla." Zahara laughed despite her nerves. "Week 5? Really? Really? I kept telling myself it was just attraction. Chemistry. Strategic partnership. But then you fell asleep on my shoulder during that budget review meeting and I realized I was in serious trouble." "I fell asleep during a meeting?" "You'd been awake for 36 hours. You were exhausted. And when you woke up, you apologized and immediately went back to working instead of taking care of yourself. That's when I knew." "Knew what?" "That I was falling in love with someone who cared more about everyone else than her own well-being. Someone who'd risk everything for what's right. Someone who makes me want to be better." Zahara's breath caught. "You love me?" "Completely. Inconveniently. Absolutely." Isu took her hand. "And after Friday, when the arrests happen and you're finally safe, I'm going to spend every day proving it." If you'll let me. I love you too, Zahara whispered. I think I have for weeks. They kissed on her balcony with Port Valier sparkling below them and 3 days between them and safety. Friday morning arrived. Zahara was at her office when Isu called. It's happening. Right now. Federal agents are executing warrants. Zahara pulled up the news. Breaking story: major fraud investigation at charitable foundation. Multiple arrests. Her phone rang. Agent Reeves. Director Jean and 4 associates are in custody. We've frozen accounts. Seized records. It's over. Over. Zahara sat down heavily. 4 months of work. 4 months of fear. 4 months of building this case. And it was over. Isu arrived at her office an hour later. Zahara fell into his arms. It's done, she said. It's done. They held each other while Port Valier processed the news that one of its most prominent foundations had been covering massive fraud for years. Now came the hard part, facing the public. The press conference was scheduled for Monday morning. Agent Reeves had been clear: we need you both to speak. To explain your roles. To show the public that legitimate investigation methods were used. Zahara stood in front of her mirror practicing her statement for the 10th time. Isu was picking her up in 20 minutes. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Silver? This is Hyun Suk. Zahara almost hung up. Then curiosity won. What do you want? To apologize. Properly. And to tell you that I'm cooperating with federal agents. Full testimony against everyone in the network. In exchange for what? Witness protection. A new start somewhere far from Port Valier. His voice was quiet. I know my apology means nothing after what I did. But I need you to know, what I felt for you was real. The assignment was fake. My feelings weren't. That doesn't undo 2 years of lies. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just acknowledgement that I'm trying to do the right thing now, even if I failed before. Zahara was quiet for a long moment. I acknowledge it. Good luck with your new start, Hyun Suk. She hung up. At the press conference, standing next to Isu and Agent Reeves, Zahara told her story. She explained how she'd noticed financial discrepancies over 2 years. How she'd kept meticulous records. How she'd worked with federal investigators for 4 months to document active fraud. My company's reputation matters to me, Zahara said into the microphones. So I need to be clear, every event I coordinated was legitimate except the anniversary gala, which was proposed specifically to catch criminals in the act. Every client was served honestly. Every contract was fulfilled professionally. My integrity is intact. Reporters asked questions. Isu fielded most of them. Then one reporter asked, Mr. Cha, is it true you're romantically involved with Ms. Silver? Did this relationship begin before or during the investigation? Isu glanced at Zahara. She nodded slightly. Our relationship began during the investigation, Isu answered honestly. It started as professional partnership and became something more. Neither of us planned it. But yes, we're together. Isn't that a conflict of interest? Falling in love with someone you respect isn't a conflict. It's just life being complicated. The press conference ended. Photos of Zahara and Isu were everywhere by evening. But the reaction wasn't what Zahara feared. Her phone rang constantly with clients calling to tell her they admired her courage. With nonprofits asking if she'd audit their finances. With business reporters requesting interviews about fraud prevention. Mika burst into her office with the newspaper. You're on the front page. Local business owner helps expose $1 million fraud. The article positioned Zahara as a hero. A whistleblower who'd risked everything for what was right. 1 week later, Zahara received an unexpected visitor. Madame Cha arrived at Zahara's office with lunch and advice. My grandson tells me you're pivoting your business, she said, unpacking Korean food containers. I'm adding forensic auditing services. Helping organizations identify financial irregularities before they become catastrophic. Smart. You're turning your skills into something uniquely valuable. I hope so. But I'll admit, I'm nervous. This is a big change. All significant growth is uncomfortable. But you've already proven you can handle difficult things. Madam Cha studied her. Isu says he wants to marry you eventually. Zahara nearly choked on her tea. He said that? To me. Not to you, apparently. He's waiting for the right time. She smiled. I wanted you to know that when that time comes, you have my blessing. Not because you're marrying into the Cha family, but because you've earned your place as an equal. That means more than you know. After Madam Cha left, Zahara sat at her desk and let herself feel everything she'd been suppressing for 4 months. Relief that the investigation was over. Pride in what she'd accomplished. Grief for the danger she'd faced. And hope, fragile but real, for what came next. That evening, Isu took her to dinner. Not a budget meeting. Not an investigation strategy session. Just dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the harbor. When you asked me weeks ago if I'd have dinner with you after this was over, Zahara said, I don't think I really believed we'd get here. I never doubted, Isu said. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. You were always going to finish what you started. Stubbornness or stupidity? Courage. The difference matters. They talked about the future. About where her business was headed. About what came next for Isu's foundation work. I'm starting a new foundation, Isu revealed. Separate from Crystalline. Focused on financial transparency in nonprofits. And I want you to consult for it. Me? You just exposed one of Port Valier's biggest charitable frauds. You're exactly who should be designing better systems. That sounds like mixing business with pleasure. We've been doing that for 4 months. Seems to work for us. Zahara laughed. And for the first time in months, the laughter felt light instead of weighted with stress. 4 months ago, she'd crashed into a stranger at a gala. Now she was sitting across from the man she loved, planning a future that included both their businesses and their hearts. It wasn't the ending she'd expected. It was better. Zahara stood in front of a beautiful building in Port Valier's Arts District. The sign above the door read, Silver and Company, Luxury Events plus Forensic Auditing. 6 months since the arrests. 6 months since her life completely transformed. Ready? Mika asked, holding giant scissors for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Zahara looked at the crowd. Current clients. Former clients. Business reporters. Port Valier's community leaders who'd once overlooked her. And Isu, standing in the back with his grandmother, both smiling. Ready, Zahara said. She cut the ribbon. Cameras flashed. People applauded. Inside, her company had transformed. The team had grown from 4 to 9 people, not the 15 she'd once imagined, but steady, sustainable growth. 3 event coordinators. 2 forensic auditors. Administrative staff. A small but mighty operation. They'd handled 20 major events in 6 months. Conducted audits for 8 nonprofits, finding 3 more fraud schemes before they escalated. Zahara had testified before a state committee about charitable fraud prevention. Silver and Company wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. During her speech to the crowd, a reporter asked, what advice would you give other women building businesses in competitive industries? Zahara thought carefully. Stop waiting for permission to be great. Your skills have value. Your voice matters. Don't shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. Build your empire on your own terms and don't apologize for taking up space. The crowd applauded. After the ceremony, Madam Cha pulled Zahara aside. For you, she said, handing Zahara a silk bag. Inside was a jade bracelet. Old. Clearly valuable. Beautiful. This belonged to my mother, Madame Cha explained. She wore it while building her business. I wore it while surviving my husband's empire. Isu's mother wore it while legitimizing our family. She helped Zahara put it on. Now you wear it. Not because you're part of the Cha family yet. Because you've built something worthy of respect. Because you've earned your place. Zahara's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank me by continuing to challenge my stubborn grandson. He needs someone who doesn't let him win every argument. Later, as guests mingled, Zahara noticed a car across the street. She walked to the window. Hyun-suk sat in the driver's seat, a federal escort visible in the car behind him. He'd been granted a few hours out of witness protection to attend the event from a distance. He watched through the glass as Zahara stood in her new office surrounded by success she'd built herself. Their eyes met for just a moment. Zahara didn't wave. Didn't acknowledge him beyond that brief eye contact. He'd warned her of danger when he didn't have to. He'd testified against dangerous people. He was trying to be better. But he was her past. Not her present. She turned back to her party. That evening, Isu found her on the office balcony overlooking Port Valier's skyline. Successful day, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Zahara leaned back against him. 6 months ago, I was terrified. Now look at this. You built it. Every piece of it. We built some of it together. The best pieces, Isu agreed. He was quiet for a moment. I have something to ask you. That sounds ominous. Not ominous. Just important. He turned her to face him. We've been together 6 months officially. 9 months if we count from the gala. We've survived a federal investigation, death threats, and your cake-tasting stubbornness. It's called having standards. It's called being impossible. But he was smiling. Zahara Silver, I love you. I love your stubbornness. I love how you care about everyone. I love that you challenge me. I love that you built an empire while everyone was too busy underestimating you to notice. He pulled out a small box. Zahara's breath caught. I'm not asking you to marry me yet, Isu continued. I know you need to establish your new business direction first. But I'm asking if you'd consider it. If you'd consider building a future where we're partners in everything. Inside the box was a simple, elegant ring. Not flashy. Perfect. Is this a pre-proposal? Zahara asked, touching the ring gently. It's a promise. That when you're ready, when your business is stable and you feel secure in everything you've built, I'll ask properly. With flowers and terrible romantic speeches and probably Chairman Meow supervising. Zahara laughed through tears. I'd consider it. I'd consider it very seriously. Good. That's all I need to know. He put the ring on her right hand. A promise for the future. Not a demand. Not pressure. Just a partnership acknowledging that timing mattered as much as love. As they stood on that balcony, Port Valier sparkling below, Zahara thought about the woman she'd been 9 months ago. The woman so focused on being invisible that she'd almost missed being seen. The woman who'd built success but was afraid to claim it. The woman who thought power came from other people's approval. That woman was gone. In her place stood Zahara Silver. Business owner. Forensic auditor. Fraud investigator. Empire builder. The woman who turned being underestimated into her greatest advantage. The woman who proved that the most dangerous thing you can do is ignore someone who's been watching, learning, and documenting everything. And as Isu pulled her close and Chairman Meow meowed from the office window demanding attention, Zahara smiled. Because this wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. 1 year after the Gala collision that changed everything, Zahara stood at a podium addressing the Port Valier Business Council. Thank you for inviting me to speak about nonprofit fraud prevention, she began. A year ago, I was just an event planner. Today, my company has audited 32 organizations, prevented an estimated $5 million in fraud, and helped 3 nonprofits restructure their financial systems to prevent future problems. The audience, business leaders, nonprofit directors, government officials, listened intently. Zahara was no longer invisible. After her speech, several nonprofit directors approached asking for consultations. 2 major donors wanted to discuss funding her fraud prevention program. A university professor requested permission to use her case study in teaching materials. This was her life now. Not just coordinating beautiful events, but protecting organizations from exploitation. That evening, Isu cooked dinner at his penthouse. Well, cooked was generous. He'd ordered from 5 different restaurants and arranged everything on fancy plates. You realize I know this is takeout, Zahara said, laughing. The effort is what counts. Chairman Meow, who now split time between both their homes, jumped onto the table demanding attention. Your cat has no respect for romantic dinners, Isu observed. Our cat, Zahara corrected. You adopted him together. True. Isu lifted his wine glass. To 1 year since you crashed into me and turned my investigation into something much more complicated. To 1 year since you saved my champagne emergency and recruited me for federal crimes. Crime fighting. Not committing. They clinked glasses. I've been thinking, Isu said carefully. About timing. About promises made 6 months ago. Zahara's heart sped up. Go on. Your business is stable. Thriving, actually. You've established yourself professionally. You've built something that stands on its own merit. You're secure in who you are and what you've created. This sounds like you're building towards something. I am. Isu set down his wine glass. I'm building toward asking if you'll marry me. Properly this time. With all the flowers and terrible romantic speeches I promised. He pulled out a different box. Opened it to reveal a stunning engagement ring that somehow managed to be both elegant and bold. Zahara Silver, will you marry me? Not because I saved your champagne emergency or helped with an investigation. Not because my family approves or Port Valier society expects it. But because somewhere between spreadsheets and 3 a.m. coffee and Chairman Meow's judgment, I fell completely in love with you. Because you make me want to be better. Because I can't imagine building a future that doesn't include you. Zahara wiped away tears. That was actually a pretty good romantic speech. You're supposed to answer the question. Yes. Obviously yes. Did you think I'd say no after wearing your promise ring for 6 months? Isu slipped the engagement ring onto her finger, next to Madame Cha's jade bracelet. I wasn't entirely sure. You're unpredictable. Good. Keeps you on your toes. They kissed while Chairman Meow knocked Isu's wine glass off the table in protest of being ignored. The wedding planning took 4 months. Zahara coordinated her own event, which Mika found hilarious. You do realize you could hire someone else, Mika pointed out. And miss the control? Never. The wedding was small. Intimate. Only people who truly mattered. Madame Cha cried during the ceremony. Isu's aunt gave a speech about how Zahara had given their family something it needed, someone who challenged tradition while respecting its value. Mika caught the bouquet and immediately threw it back. I'm not ready for that pressure. At the reception, Agent Reeves, who'd become an unlikely friend, raised a toast. To the woman who turned event coordination into criminal investigation and somehow made it look easy. It wasn't easy, Zahara corrected. It was terrifying. But you did it anyway. That's the difference. Late in the evening, Zahara and Isu snuck away from their own reception to the venue balcony. 1 year ago, Isu said, I was at a gala trying to figure out how to investigate fraud without exposing my family. I never imagined it would lead to this. To getting married? To finding a partner in everything. Business. Purpose. Life. Zahara looked at the Port Valier skyline. The same city that had once overlooked her. that now knew her name and respected her work. I spent so long trying to be invisible, she said quietly. Making myself smaller so no one would question my presence. Then you literally crashed into me and made invisibility impossible. Technically, you crashed into me. Details. She turned to face him. Thank you. For seeing me when I was trying so hard not to be seen. Thank you for trusting someone again after being hurt. For taking risks. For building something beautiful from absolute chaos. They kissed while their wedding reception continued without them and Port Valier sparkled below. 2 years after a collision at a gala, Zahara Silver had completely rewritten her story. From invisible coordinator to recognized fraud investigator. From woman seeking approval to woman who defined her own success. From someone who shrank herself to someone who commanded attention. And most importantly, from someone who thought power came from other people to someone who understood that real power came from knowing your worth and refusing to apologize for it. She'd built an empire not despite being underestimated, but because of it. Because while everyone else was busy dismissing her, she was watching. Learning. Documenting. Building something they'd never see coming. The woman who looked like just the help had become the woman who brought down an entire criminal network. And that? That was the greatest plot twist of all.